Hi, welcome to Walking the Path. I'm going to be talking to people who are on a spiritual journey, who want to share with us their experiences about what they've found on the journey. So if you're interested in spirituality and how you can embed it into your life, come and walk the path with me. Good morning and welcome to Walking the Path with Chris. And walking the path with me today is someone I haven't seen for a couple of years. It's Frankie Merridue. Hello, Frankie.
Good morning.
Hello. So we're going to do a sort of recorded catch-up almost, but we're going to have a look at the path that Frankie's been walking and where it's taken her over the last few years. So the first thing I want to ask Frankie is, tell me about your spirituality. Were you always a spiritual person, or did it come to you in later life?
No. Yes. No. It's it's done a few rounds of the sun, shall we say. I'm quite different from a lot of people. I have memories in my cot of sitting with spirit children. And so I grew up with that and used to have teddy bear tea parties with them. So I didn't ever know anything different, which then presented an awful lot of things much later on.
I had invisible friends as well. Yeah, except they weren't invisible.
No,
but they were to everybody else, and that caused a few problems. Yeah.
And then I sort of went through my childhood, and it laid off from the age of 9 to 13. At the age of 9 and the family circumstances that I was growing up in, I had dedicated myself to the Mother Mary and wanted to be a nun. And that's all I wanted to do. And then back at 13, in came things like being able to move glasses and lift things off walls with my eyes, which I didn't understand. I just knew I could do it. Much to the amusement of half of my friends and the absolute God fear to others. I saw you do that with your eyes. And I was like, did you? Because what had actually happened is I had a Saturday job in a china store in Horsham, and there were tiered glass shelves with beautiful china on, which I adored. But on the wall above them were clocks. And I was looking at a set of china plates with like the Ace of Hearts. You know, they were poker players' plates. And I looked at the Ace of Hearts and I thought, that'd be really cool if I could lift that off the wall and throw it on the floor. So I flicked my eyes up, off it shot, and landed on the floor, missing all the rest of the china. I worked with my best friend, who's still my best friend, all of these years later, and she was like, "Oh, you freak! How did you do that?" I don't know, but I'm going to try it again. So I tried it with a Peter Rabbit money box off a shelf to the floor. And then she said, don't you ever do that again at work. We're going to get told off. And of course, you know, we're 13-year-old girls, but it was brilliant. Yeah. And then that, you know, I've spent the rest of my life trying to get the hot pointy thing called an iron to get up and do the ironing for me on the board.
Yeah. Yeah, same here. You know,
it's so frustrating.
Sometimes I think if spirits really wanted to help me, they'd do the hoovering.
Yeah, really. I get that. I'm busy. I'm busy healing. Could you please just do the housework?
Yeah.
Housework angels.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I used to have bin fairies, and then I realised that it was actually my mother-in-law. They seemed to stop when she moved down to Horsham.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. So, yeah, that was that. And then I had, it's quite interesting. I met up with my first true love nearly 40 years later, just a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And we've always kept in contact because obviously he was around with my mysterious happenings. Yeah. And at the time, he used to say to me, you're not of this world. He said, you say and do things that are so profound and happen. It's freaky, but I love you. And so meeting up in our mid-50s, yeah. At the end of it, I said to him, so what changed? And he said, you grew into who you were as a child. Yes. And he said, you're still the wise old owl. He said, you used to say things way beyond your years even then. And there was an element of truth, you know. And it still happens now. My own
Yeah.
children, for example, if I say I've got a feeling, they'll go, oh, hell, it'll happen.
Yeah.
Let's not go there if mum says it. You know, it's one of those
Yeah.
things. And my friends are like that too.
Yeah.
They look at my face if something's going on and they go, uh-oh, she's receiving.
Get your antenna going and off they go.
Yeah. I mean, obviously now it's much more controlled, of course.
Well, yes, yeah. So have you, I know you have, but just tell us how you've learned to control this, or how you developed the abilities that you have, should I say.
So essentially, I did a massive rite of passage at a very young age.
Mm.
And I had my first child at 18, the second at 19, and the third at nearly 26. And by the time I was 20, I had picked up, or somebody had given me actually a deck of tarot cards.
Yeah.
I could not understand them at all. They made no sense to me. Why on earth did anyone need that? Then by the time I was 25, I ended up in that year, because I could now do automatic writing. I had channelings coming through me. And whilst I knew it was from spirit and had a very vested interest in spirit by now, I was also having all the experiences that go on with that, you know, exploring paganism, exploring the dark and the light and all the stuff that we do, reading books. And I went to 3 development circles inside a year thinking, oh, I need to learn my craft.
Yeah.
Ho, ho, ho. And I was thrown out of all 3 within 3 weeks over that course of the year, and I could not understand it. And what I came to learn through spirit talking to me is that, darling, you don't need any of that. Why don't you just trust us? And I said, oh, so I don't need to go, because, you know, you're programmed, aren't you? Hospital's a safe place. Doctors know all. School and education is everything. And so, whilst being quite a wild child and a young mum and very free thinking, I was not free thinking there. It emulated that I had been far more knowing than the teachers that were teaching development circle, and they had realised this, and I had presented a danger to them by how I questioned what I was learning and what I came back with when I'd been sent off to do something in meditation or whatever. And that was very, 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 very peculiar to me. So an example of that was I was given 2 postcards, one with a picture of some clematis on, and one with an old Victorian wallpaper. And I wasn't given them. I had to sit opposite somebody that was holding them, and they were transmitting that information to me. Yeah. So I drew them, and that teacher threw me out at the end of that circle. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, it never ceases to amaze me that some people think it's a competition.
Yes, very much the stuff of the ego is what I was witnessing.
Yeah.
And the era of stuck in the ways of the old way of teaching, because they themselves were not fluid enough to travel deeper, further, higher, more, greater expansion, and then just understanding that they are the expansion. And that then allowed me to be a lot freer. You know, I had a huge history here of going to spiritual church from the age of 18 as well, because I'd actually was brought up in, you'll love this, Protestant father, Catholic mother environment, and had to go to Sunday school alternatively. So, and of course, none of that fitted in with me, because I just love Mary, as I still love Mary.
Yeah.
And she didn't have a particularly religious connotation attached to Catholicism. For me, she was the great mother. Yeah. And had brought and shown us the greatest healer on earth and how to heal. As much as she stood there with her arms open and called every child of colour and creed to safety, of which Our Lady of Lourdes sits on my side. Yeah. And I work with her in childbirth. She's been omnipresent this week. She's
been omnipresent with me. I've got I have an altar behind me, which you can't see because I've got my screen up. But Mother Mary has come out, and that she's been with me all week. And also the Divine Feminine, the basic. I forget what it is. I'll get the card. Excuse me. You're familiar with this deck, I presume.
What deck is that?
The Divine Feminine, Megan Watterson.
I haven't got it.
It's a fantastic deck.
Oh,
It's full of goddesses. Wonderful deck. But yeah, the Cosmic Egg.
yes.
Mother Mary from the Ascended Masters deck, Mother Mary.
Yeah.
She's been with me all week as well. How about that?
Yeah. And I think I've been watching this because we moved before Christmas, and that's taken a lot of recovery from the journey that I'd been on. And I was unable to, the essentials were out. The first thing that came in was my spiritual corner and my chair.
Yeah.
And the cross and everything else that's my standalone everyday needs and work essence. We had all new crystals that flew through the door that went straight up on the windowsill as I took the keys. And I was unable to really feel and ground into the property. And there's been quite a few bonfires, quite some drumming.
Yeah.
And asking of the earth if the land spirits here are happy to accept my energy in, and for me to grow food here and to teach here. And then I did another one on the full moon, and suddenly out came my box, and there were all my Marys, there were all my I have a huge rosary collection, of which most have been gifted to me through my life. And so everything suddenly came out. And my two most favourite Marys were zinging at the beginning of the week as I lifted them out the box. I was like, wow, you've been in storage for years and you've come out.
Yeah.
We're home. and their energy's like really huge in here. And I love that. That's that comfort feeling, isn't it? I always find with Mary. She's my comfort, like my blanket I'm wearing now.
Yeah.
So that happened, and then my mum passed away in my late 20s, which was it was a blessed relief, and it gave me wings. Her story was, interestingly, that we're on Mary, one of deep abuse, being sent away to a Catholic French boarding school. And the nuns and everything else. And then what happened to her in her life as she grew and chose her career in nursing, and indeed became a paediatric nursing sister. But with all of those experiences came alcoholism and very severe mental health. In essence, she killed herself through that deep sadness and where she had to turn to. But that gave me great wings. And in the run up to all of this, because I crossed my mum over and I hadn't really spoken to my parents in years, and I got a phone call from my dad because she was simply dying. And I was like, okay, so you want me to step back into the fold and take over? And my dad was very much yes. So Spirit guided me with that. And the crystals and the red flowers and the everything that was needed, where to put stuff on her body. And the run up to this had been most bizarre, because I was obviously doing readings to a penny. I'd got this waiting list. Will you teach us? Will you teach us? And I was still in that. I don't know anything.
Yeah.
That whole stuff of the ego again. So my mum passed, and with it came a teacher straight through my front door. He said to me, why aren't you teaching? I said, I don't know. He said, right, my wife and I have done this all of our lives. And what we're going to do to help you feel like you know what you're doing is we'll give you the rules to circle. I was like, oh. So I had all these beautiful rules, and they resonated quite beautifully in how to work with somebody that's going to come and be in your circle, how to choose what energies are right or wrong for one and good for another. And then I began to teach literally within the year. And that was really beautiful. I suddenly had cygnets and swans. And obviously cygnets being the babies and swans being the intermediates. But what then followed in that year, which felt insane at the time, was I had spiritual teachers asking to come and sit with me and be stretched.
Wow.
And taken on bigger, newer, fresher journeys.
Yeah.
Which is very important, because you know yourself that even we as teachers like to go back and be the pupil.
I think that's why I set this up in a sense, because it's not just aimed at people who are newly curious. It's about the rest of us who also want to see what other people have done and where we can learn from them.
Absolutely.
I think this is a very important thing for me to do.
It's very important. And this whole corona thing, which is how I flew back in to do this, because I'd been, as you know, I've been working as a birth and postnatal doula for a great many years. But even in there was the lesson of who you are. And many, many times over the years, had I been asked to attend ayahuasca ceremonies, sweat lodges, all sorts, and my answer was always, no, it's not safe. And when I got the calling to work in childbirth, it was very obvious to me, because I could hear the little souls in the cosmos. I could always tell somebody when you're going to have a baby and what it would be, or how many, and what needed to happen for them to be able to enter the womb space. So now, having been asked to do this, sacred womb massage, all the other stuff that was there in me was to develop outwards. And, you know, I was very good at being small.
Yes. You're not small. I have to say that you're about a foot taller than me.
You're a good 5'10" of me.
And I'm 4'10", so yeah, a foot taller. How about that for a guess?
Yeah.
But we're very good at taking up half the space that we should, aren't we?
Yeah. And that's our childhood lessons, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the era that we grew up in, and the type of parenting we were subjected to. Whereas our children are not. And this is very reflected in the birth families that I have worked with. So there's this huge pull to, I'll backtrack a little bit actually. So essentially I went into the birth work, and annually I meet with various shamans from around the world that come, and they're doing their healings. And I had the most beautiful conversation with Don Emilio from the Vivarica. And if you've ever stood in front of the shamans or had the pleasure of their company, they look at you and go backwards and forwards through you, and you can really feel the energy. Forwards, backwards. They're reading absolutely everything.
It was like being put through a scanner.
Yes, it's exactly that.
Yeah.
And he just looked at me and grinned. And he said, you were never meant to go to the ceremonies. And I was like, thank you. He said, and you work with childbirth and the bridge and the little souls on the other side. I said, yes, I do. He said, very good. He said, the midwife energy has already got everything that all those people that seek to take the drugs or do those journeys want, because you already see very clearly. You can heal very clearly. And you know what to do. Clear vision. That is the energy of the midwife. So I was like, okay, thank you for that. That answers my question from my mid-20s as to why I never, ever made it. And I was always stopped. If I said, yeah, I'm coming to Devon, I'm going to do that, car would break down. There would be a big bill comes through the door. Something would happen where I would be having to be responsible. Yeah,
the universe has a way of making sure you don't go where you're not needed.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, unless you're going to force your way through it. So, and then of course comes the lesson. So essentially that was very beautiful. And it's not that I don't do the birth work now, I do. It's no different to when I began working with placentas. They spoke to me, and I could tell you the conscious preconception, the conception, the pregnancy and the birth, just by being in the presence of the placenta, which then told me what needed to be done with it before that could be turned back round into encapsulation or tinctures for the mums. So that really countersank everything. COVID came, and I did not want to work or carry in any such thing, because I felt if I carried that into a mother or a baby and either were lost,
absolutely,
quite simply, I'd hang myself, because I would feel so responsible. And so that stopped. Spirit called me back in one day and said, you need to turn up on this computer thing on Facebook. And I was like, right, okay. We spend our lives trying to be away from this energy of the computer, but actually we're heading back in. And I was like, but I'm capable of really high work. What good am I going to be in this? And of course, my child, people need you. They need your earthiness, your gentleness and your strength and your guiding light to bring them through. And so I was like, oh, okay, I can do that. They said, you're very grounded. They will love you. And so, of course, I rocked back into this work. My dementia client that I work with daily passed away, and that led it all the way back to my beginnings of this is the work you're here to do. And I'm back and very excited and absolutely loving the play and display of the universe.
Yeah, it's just an amazing. We have a parallel journey in some respects. That I had to wait till both my parents were dead before I could go back onto my spiritual journey, because my mum was a devout Christian and Dad was an equally devout atheist. So growing up with these abilities in that family was, shall we say, challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to wait until they'd both gone, which was 20 years ago nearly.
Christmases weren't fun, were they?
Oh, God, no. Not in the slightest. But do you know what? There is some of it that I'm glad I went through, because it means that it gives me more of a perspective. And I don't know if you actually met Derek, who's the spiritual healer at the centre, at my centre. Older Welsh guy.
No, I don't think
I was obviously working with him when the centre was open. We could do that. I was asking him the same sort of questions as I've asked you. Sort of, how did you learn? And then I said to him, will you teach me? And he looked at me and he said, you don't need me to teach you. What a stupid thing to say. I thought, as you do, because I myself also didn't saw my self-concept was as the sort of the neophyte, the acolyte, the one who just started out on the journey, without actually realising that the journey that I was on had lasted for lifetimes in the past and will last for lifetimes in the future. And I'm just in the middle. I'm here on a part of it. So what I wanted to ask you for the final part was, you said that you're back sort of in doing Facebook and this sort of stuff because you're needed here, and we are. What would you say to someone who came to you and said, what can you advise me on my spiritual path?
To be honest, I have been inundated with people on the path asking for readings, rebirths, and very deep healings. And the real reply to that is, when somebody is sat in front of you, you're working to clear and heal the past to come into the present before you can move forwards into the future with their development. My biggest advice to anybody is, it does not matter who is dressed up as a guru, what they look like, or how they put themselves out. You are your own guru. If you're sat in front of me now, or you're called to my energy now, it's because you're ready for the next part of your path. And to walk gently, peacefully, and in love with yourself and your surroundings as you come along the spiritual warrior path. And to be mindful always of what you stand upon, what feeds you, what gives to you, and what heals you. And if you can learn the deep respect of that infinity loop, you will be well, very well.
That is so profound. It really is just mind-blowing. But it is, you're right, I feel it. I can feel it myself. But yes, I set this up so that people could get sort of ideas, if you like, or but ultimately so that they can get validification, if that's the word. Because I truly believe we don't teach anybody anything. It's already in there. And a good teacher
my readings
bring it to the surface, if you like.
Yeah, my readings and healings at the minute, reminding, realigning, remembering. It's all about the re's.
Yeah, because we know who we are. We just have to remember it.
Of course, and hence why all of our work is so important now. So one of the big things that I've been working towards, as you know, many years ago, I had an extremely successful spiritual centre, stroke room, teaching space, healing space.
Yeah.
And I'm currently, a lot of the stuff I do, that money is all being saved up, and so are the donations to purchase another one and have it built at the bottom of my garden.
Wow.
Healing children is going to feature very, very high for the next 20 years, amongst all my other work. And I need that space. I need that holy, sacred space away from the house, that is mine and mine alone,
Yeah.
and everybody's that comes to it. So that's what I'm working towards at the moment, because I'm inundated with requests for development circles, healing teachings, evenings of clairvoyance, and it's all in that wait space. But I don't have to wait. I've got a garden that has the potential to be so magical, and she's beginning to show herself now. As is the growing of the vegetables that are just, I'm just going to do a garden hack for all mums and people with stuff that's in your house and a seed shed.
Yeah.
No, loving that earth. Loving that earth and thanking her. Even when I peel potatoes, I'm thank you, Mother Earth, for providing this. Thank you for the journey. But I want to leave you with a thought on these seeds, because what we're doing here is seed thoughts. Is when people have seeds to plant in the garden, you know, when the men used to go fishing and they used to put maggots in the front lip crawling around their front teeth. Yucky, yucky. Yeah. You put your seeds there and you allow the DNA from your spit for a couple of minutes to go into the seed. And then you plant your seed. That has taken on and knows exactly what nourishment you need for the coming harvest for this year. And a great experiment is to toss some in some mud and let them grow, and then gently and lovingly ask the earth to be wholesome and good, the seed to be your health, and that we are blessed that we're in that position to grow this food in this time and space. Amen.
Indeed. Frankie Merridue, thank you so much for walking the path with me today. We must do this again sometime.
I'd love to. But we could just talk for hours, couldn't we? It's all there's so much, isn't there? And I think that's the beauty, that you've provided this beautiful podcast for people to drop into, to find, to learn. It's going to be empowering. It's encouraging for people who might be scared or shy or embarrassed or think they're going nuts, because they can hear voices that are not schizophrenic voices, but they are actually the beautiful world of spirit that we've come to know and love and work with every day. Yeah. It's amazing. Thank you so much for putting this on.
Oh, thank you so much for joining me, for agreeing to it. I mean, it never ceases to amaze me that people want to go along with my wild ideas.
Well, everybody loves a wild child, darling.
I do. I do indeed. Thank you. Bless you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. We've come to the end of the path for today. If you'd like to support the podcast by sponsoring it, please get in touch. Or you can visit our website, www.amethystcentre.com, or our Patreon or Facebook page for Walking the Path. See you next time.